Tea time once again, and hello. This is gonna be for week 9. Okay, I'm hoping this is gonna be our last topic, which I would title chlorophyll and photosynthesis. So please bear with me. Um, we're gonna be going through some terminologies, and then I'm gonna be using 3 videos for this presentation, somehow to just give you an overview, talk about chloroplast, and then go with photosynthesis. Okay, so first, let me just share to you a video. Okay, I will be using the presentation from YouTube so that you could also see. I hope you could see it now. Okay. And let's see. This is about photosynthesis. Oops, sorry. Let me just verify if I was able to share the audio. Okay. And let's share. Okay.
This is a plant leaf producing oxygen bubbles by the process of photosynthesis. This footage is
Okay. So I hope you could see it that this plant over here, it is producing bubbles. Okay. And as a byproduct, and that is your oxygen.
sped up in order to show oxygen bubbles growing. Photosynthesis is a process used by plants, algae, protists, and some bacteria to produce carbohydrates and oxygen from water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. Organisms use photosynthesis to create food for themselves in the form of carbohydrates. This is done by an organelle in cells called chloroplasts.
Okay. So chloroplast, which basically gives the plant the green coloring. Now, listen to this one.
You can see them moving inside these plant cells. They are the green round structures seen here.
So I hope you could see it because I thought, okay, that chloroplast was just steadily staying in one place, okay, but they're actually moving, and you would also see later on why are they moving.
Chloroplasts can move around in order to get more sunlight when there's little light, or move away from strong direct sunlight to avoid damage. Just like humans, too much
Okay, take note on that one. Okay, they want to get more sunlight, or they would need to avoid to stay away from sunlight so that they won't be damaged, which is interesting.
sun can be bad. This process of chloroplasts moving to control light exposure is called photorelocation.
Okay, take note of that one, but it's not going to be part of our it's not going to be part of the vocabulary that we're going to, but it's good to know that one, photo relocation.
Here we can see an oxygen bubble growing and the chloroplast in the plant cells moving around. We see a lot more oxygen bubbles than carbon dioxide bubbles for a few reasons. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, is more soluble than oxygen in water. This means carbon dioxide dissolves in water, similar to how salt dissolves in water. So when oxygen levels start building up in the water, these oxygen bubbles form more than carbon dioxide ones do.
Okay, that's also interesting to know. Okay, so carbon dioxide easily dissolves, unlike oxygen. Okay, that's why there are more, what you would see are actually oxygen bubbles.
Carbon dioxide also reacts with water to produce carbonic acid, which is a completely different chemical. And carbon dioxide is also used up in photosynthesis. When plants photosynthesize, oxygen is somewhat of a waste product. They do need oxygen just like animals do, but they
I hope you could see it, but the chloroplasts are actually moving while there are gas formation. Unbelievable.
End up producing way more than they actually need. That is a good thing for all other living organisms that rely on them for oxygen. But that is also a bad thing for organisms that can be harmed by oxygen. These organisms, called obligate anaerobes, live without oxygen and can actually be killed by it.
Anaerobic. Anaerobic meaning there is no oxygen.
In fact, over 2.5 billion years ago, the Earth had very little oxygen in it. It was filled with anaerobic organisms until cyanobacteria came along. Cyanobacteria, which are photosynthetic bacteria, slowly produced oxygen over millions of years. The rising levels of oxygen slowly killed a large number of species on Earth and created a large extinction event. But this large extinction event helped set up the next stage of life: multicellular organisms and eventually animals. Photosynthesis is a very complicated but important process in biology. While all of the chemical processes of it can't be completely seen through a microscope, the oxygen produced at the end is. And when the footage is sped up, it produces very beautiful videos. So enjoy this biological marvel.
Indeed, it is a biological marvel. So I hope you appreciate that one of how these things are actually moving to chloroplast, I mean. Okay. And before that one, we need to go through some of the terminologies that will be part of our exam. So that is NADPH. Take note of that one. It's a mouthful. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate hydrogen. The full form is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate hydrogen. Okay, what does it do? In many chemical reactions that make up a procedure of the photosynthesis. So take note of that one. I will close it now. And then as an overview, we need to know what hetero and autotrophs are. Autotrophs are organisms that make their own food. And who are they? They are plants. Heterotrophs are organisms that have to eat or consume food. And there is another one. Mesotrophs can make their own food, but can also consume food. Okay, so it basically falls into heterotrophs. We have to eat to consume food. Okay, autotrophic, heterotrophs, or heterotrophic. All right. Okay, before the discussion of photosynthesis, we need to know the insides of chloroplast. This video is 5 minutes long, but we're just gonna go through if we could see the parts of a chloroplast. Let's start. Let me just move this back. Oops. Okay, and play.
Anderson, and in this video I'm going to talk about the chloroplast. That's the organelle found in plants where photosynthesis takes place. A great place to
Okay, we know that already. Chloroplast, where photosynthesis takes place.
find them would be in the leaf of a tree. So if we look at that in cross section, we're going to have a number of cells, and these are going to be the organelles found within that cell.
Okay, those are the chloroplasts in there that has been pointed and magnified on the other side.
They've got a structure that we'll talk about in just a second, but it's important to understand that they're not fixed within the cell. They can move around.
Okay, as you have seen in the video, they can actually
And so if we
move
apply a
around.
little bit of light to a cell, all of the chloroplasts will line up so they can get the maximum amount of light. If we apply too much light to that cell, they'll hide on the sides of the cell. They're
Interesting, yeah. Okay, if even the chloroplast, we would somehow think of it as having its own mind to somehow protect the life of the plant. Okay, that's very interesting.
doing that to protect themselves from damage, but they're not alone. If we look at a chloroplast, it's going to be surrounded by a set of mitochondria.
Okay, there's your mitochondria, which basically functions as to produce or the energy house of the cell.
That will follow it throughout the cell. And the reason they're following it is they need the energy. They need the energy that was once in the sun and is now in molecules like glucose.
Okay, continue. That's
The
Mr.
structure of
Boson.
a mitochondria is pretty simple.
You have membrane. Take note of
They've
that.
got two membranes around the outside, and then they're filled with stroma.
And the stroma. Okay, that's the inside.
It's going to be this liquid on the inside. Inside that liquid, we've got ribosomes. They've got their own genome, so they have their own DNA.
Okay, there it goes. They have their own DNA. They have their own, somehow, their brain. That's why they could basically move around on their own, depending on the conditions. Okay.
But most of the action is going to take place along the
Thylakoids. Okay. And there are other parts in the
thylakoid
thylakoids.
membrane. We have a series of these membranes, and when they're stacked up, it makes a structure inside called the granum.
Granum. Okay. The thylakoids, if they are stacked up, they are called granum.
If we look specifically at one
That is
granum,
your
that's
granum. Okay.
where everything is taking place. We have both the light reaction and the Calvin cycle. I won't go into the
Okay, and here goes your light reaction and Calvin cycle, which happens
specifics
in
of photosynthesis, but if we think
this
about the
part.
Calvin cycle, what's the function of that? Well, a plant is taking in carbon dioxide and we want to add energy to that molecule. We're making something like glucose. When I say adding energy to it, what do I mean? We're adding high energy electrons, and so there are bonds.
Okay, so we'll not go through that one. Just remember the parts of the parts of the chloroplast. So you have membranes, the thylakoids, granum, grana, the stroma, and then you have your thylakoids, granum, and granum or grana. Okay, granum for singular and grana for a plural. Okay, I will stop share and we will go to our. Let me try if I could just go directly here. Okay, away from the shared application. Sorry, I need to stop share so I could share the PDF. Okay, that was okay. I was gonna. Okay, so this is your module, and as commonly, it would just tell you about the common vocabularies. Okay, let's go through it. Okay, autotrophic, it's out. Autotrophic organism use the pigment chlorophyll to harvest solar energy to produce the stored energy as chemical bonds of ATP and carbohydrates. So you have that one, autotrophs. They basically produce their own food as compared to heterotrophs. Okay. Now this is the drawing, but there is a chemical equation over here. Okay. You have carbon dioxide, water, photosynthesis, glucose, and oxygen. But if you go down here, you would see the equation as this one. Okay, so which one are we going to follow? We are going to follow this one. Okay, and placing photosynthesis and sunlight under the arrow because they are basically not part of uh, the the raw material and the product. They are just agents to make this one. Okay, through photosynthesis with the use of sunlight. Okay, so I hope that's taken. Okay, there are terminologies in here. This is just an overview of what is an ATP, how does it look like, and the cycle that it goes through. Okay, photosynthesis. Energy from sunlight is harvested and used to drive synthesis of glucose from carbon dioxide and water. Okay, um, they use sunlight to synthesize carbon dioxide and water. Now, it takes place in two distinct stages. The light reaction, okay, energy from sunlight drives the synthesis of ATP and NADP, coupled with the formation of oxygen from, and there is another one, dark reaction, okay, which will also be toasted in here. Okay. So the light reaction use sunlight to initiate electron transfer, thereby reducing NADP to NADPH and splitting water to give up oxygen as a byproduct. Okay. Light reaction, and you have your Calvin cycle, which is basically the opposite of light, also known as dark reaction. And these are the things that would happen in there. Incorporates carbon dioxide into organic through carbon fixation. Okay, now look at the image over here. They follow certain number, but with the video, which is gonna use the video. Okay, so you would see this cycle. This is what happens in a light reaction. This is light one going through two, three, four, five, six, seven, and eight. Sir, are these things are going to be out in the exam? We will just go through the process and we will focus on the video because they are more simple than this illustration. Okay, now take note that why is this photo system 2 and the next one is photo system 1. Now the video will explain why on this one. These are the technicalities of light reaction. They're quite long. Okay. And another photo system. Okay, Calvin cycle. And there are how many phases of carbon cycle? Carbon fixation, reduction, regeneration of RUBP. What happens with G3P and the cost of making carbohydrates. Okay, now there is a lot of technicalities in here, but generally there are vocabularies that I'm going to be getting in here. For instance, we're going to be getting carbon fixation for incorporating inorganic carbon molecule CO2 into an organic material. But a lot of the questions I might be getting from the video just to keep it simple. Okay, especially look at this processes of the light reaction events. There are quite long that are just numerical. Okay, so just familiarize your things on the vocabulary in here, and then we will go with the video. Okay, easier to dissect. So I will stop share on this. And let's go to the video. Bye. Okay, so I'm gonna turn on the subtitles so you could also see what he's talking about. Professor Dave with the long hair. Let's start.
Professor Dave here. Let's learn about photosynthesis.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
We talked about how cellular respiration
Okay, so this is a good one because there is a comparison between cellular respiration and photosynthesis, wherein it was part of the discussion about ATP.
transforms the food we eat into ATP. But what do
Okay, so what happens with the ATP ADP cycle? You have food undergoes cellular respiration to produce ATP, and overheat means this is what animals do. Okay, as mentioned also in our last discussion.
how cellular respiration transforms the food we eat into ATP? But what do plants do? They don't really eat in the normal sense of the word, apart from Venus flytraps. As it turns out, plants are getting their energy directly from the source, the sun. Plants use sunlight as well as water and carbon dioxide, which are plenty.
Okay, so light plus water and carbon dioxide. Now, light is just an agent. Okay, So technically, we have water and carbon dioxide as a raw material. Okay.
Plentiful in our earthly surroundings, to produce their own nourishment through a cellular process called photosynthesis. This word makes sense because photo comes from the Greek word for light, and synthesis means to build. So plants use light and small molecules to build bigger molecules that they can then metabolize to produce energy. Other organisms then eat the plants, and other organisms eat those organisms, so plants really are the foundation of the entire food chain.
Okay. So in the food chain, you would see this one. There is an order in this one. Producer, first order, second order, third order, and fourth order. There is a fifth order in the example consumer. And this falls basically under ecology.
Let's learn about how photosynthesis works. Photosynthesis consists of two stages. There are the so-called light reactions, in which solar energy is converted into chemical energy, and then there's the Calvin cycle, which uses
Okay, so we have that one light reaction and Calvin cycle, which is basically synonymous to the opposite of light, which is dark.
that chemical energy to build G3P, the precursor to glucose and other molecules. Both of these stages occur inside one of the organelles found in plant cells, which are called chloroplasts.
Okay, so we have that already established that this happens in the organelle, which is uh, chloroplast. I was going to say our chloroplast, but we don't have one.
And there are around 30 to 40 of them per cell.
What's the number? 30 to 40 per cell. That's a really good to know.
A chloroplast has two membranes that surround a fluid called stroma,
Okay, we have discussed this already.
within which sacs called thylakoids are suspended.
Okay, thylakoids. I hope you can see it in the drawing, okay? Sacs.
These sacs are often stacked in columns called grana, and in the membrane of these thylakoids sits a special pigment molecule called chlorophyll.
Okay, so here goes your green pigment. They are both chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B.
Chlorophyll can take either an A or a B form, differing only in one functional group inside the porphyrin ring, either a methyl or aldehyde group. The porphyrin ring is what gives this molecule the capacity to absorb sunlight in a unique way. If chlorophyll absorbs a photon of a particular energy, one of its electrons jumps up to an excited state.
Okay, so I hope you got that one. No, when it gets sunlight, the electrons would get excited.
These chlorophyll molecules sit inside of a photosystem with many other chlorophylls, and this excitation can get passed around from molecule to molecule, with one electron relaxing back to the ground state, emitting another photon that will excite an electron in another molecule.
Okay, so see how electrons would travel on the system.
And so forth, like a pinball machine. Eventually, a photon may strike the reaction center complex, which also contains two molecules of chlorophyll. When this happens, the high-energy excited electron, rather than relaxing back down to the ground state, will instead be transferred to another molecule called the primary electron acceptor, after which an enzyme supplies the missing electron to the oxidized chlorophyll via a water molecule to get it back to normal, which is how oxygen molecules are produced. This is the first step of the light reactions. These are
Okay, so that was just the first step. Okay, let's go now to the steps.
a series of redox reactions that occur first
Okay, we have encountered already redox, just very briefly, reduction and oxidation process.
in photosystem 2, and
There. So this is similar with what we have seen. And this is photosystem 2, PS2, and there's PS1 in there. Now, why is it like this?
then in photosystem 1. If they seem like they are named backwards, it's because they were named in the order that they were discovered.
Okay, so this one was discovered first. This one was discovered first, before this one. Okay.
In photosystem 2, electrons flow beginning with the primary electron acceptor.
The red one is your electron. Let me just turn off the subtitle.
Used in the Calvin cycle.
Sorry. No, I'm lost. Let's do that again.
After which an enzyme supplies the missing electron to the oxidized chlorophyll via a water molecule to get it back to normal.
H2O becomes O2 to reduce final chlorophyll.
Which is how oxygen molecules are produced.
Mhm.
This is the first step of the light reactions. These are a series of redox reactions that occur first in photosystem 2 and then in photosystem 1. If they seem like
So you can see here how light would hit and then gets the electron excited, okay?
they are named backwards, it's because they were named in the order that they were discovered. In photosystem 2, electrons flow beginning with the primary electron acceptor through a series of compounds that are embedded in the thylakoid membrane, sort of like the electron transport chain from cellular respiration. ATP will be a byproduct of this process due to a proton gradient and ATP synthase, also just like in
Okay, so the process would basically create ATP.
cellular respiration.
It looks complicated. I just want to know that how ATP is created.
Now electrons will move through photosystem 1, another electron transport chain. But instead of producing ATP, photosystem 1 will result in the conversion of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide.
There goes your NADPH. Okay? The process over here creates your ATP, and the other process creates your NADPH.
Phosphate, or NADP+, into NADPH. So the light reactions in the thylakoid,
Okay, take note of this one, please. Light reactions.
which are summarized by the following equations, require sunlight and water.
Okay, this is for light reaction. Requirement of,
Among the reactants and generate oxygen, ATP, and NADPH
okay, this is the product, oxygen, ATP, and NADPH.
as products. ATP and NADPH are then used in the Calvin cycle.
Okay, they are needed to the dark reaction where there is no more light. They would need this as a source of energy to do Calvin cycle. What is made in the Calvin cycle?
Which occurs in the stroma. This is where all the synthesis occurs. Unlike the citric acid cycle, which is catabolic, the Calvin cycle is anabolic, building organic molecules from smaller components.
There goes. Okay, so it's actually during without the sun where plants technically would create organic molecule. Okay.
Components requiring energy to do so. This happens in 3 phases. Phase 1 is carbon fixation, which is catalyzed.
We will just go through this, okay, but we will not be so much focusing on the names created in here. We just go with phase 1, carbon fixation.
By an enzyme called rubisco. Rubisco captures CO2 from the atmosphere and attaches it to a 5-carbon sugar called ribulose bisphosphate. The resulting 6-carbon molecule is unstable and splits into 2 molecules of 3-phosphoglycerate. Phase 2 is reduction. Each of these molecules receives a phosphate from ATP and is then reduced by NADPH, after which it loses a phosphate to become glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate.
Okay. Just finish
Some of
this.
this G3P is the output of the Calvin cycle, going on to other pathways that generate glucose and other organic compounds. And some goes back to generate more RUBP and start the cycle over again. To generate a net output of 1 G3P, the cycle needs 9 ATPs and 6 NADPHs. So to summarize, photosynthesis occurs
This one, we can focus on this one, okay? Just a summary.
in 2 phases. In the light reactions, light and water go in, and oxygen
Now,
turns
this
the
is
food
the,
we eat
sorry,
into
sorry.
ATP, where carbon dioxide comes in and organic. So to summarize,
Do that again.
photosynthesis occurs in two phases. In the light reactions, light and water go in, and oxygen comes out, as well as the ATP and NADPH that are used in the Calvin cycle, where carbon dioxide comes in and organic products like sugars come out.
Okay. So see, during light reaction, oxygen is produced, ATP and ADPH, which are sources of energy, then used, plus carbon dioxide, which will be used to turn into sugars, which we all love as fruits. Finally, let's finish.
In this way, it's almost like the reverse of cellular respiration. They involve a series of redox reactions. The electrons just flow in opposite directions. In one, a sugar is built. In the other, a sugar is degraded. And that's how
That's very good to know. Okay. As we all know, they are making sugar in here. But in our case, we are consuming sugar. Okay, degraded.
in one, a sugar is built. In the other, a sugar is degraded. And that's how plants make their own food. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you. Okay, let me just close this. So I hope you had a good overview about photosynthesis, parts of the chloroplast, and the technicalities of what happens during photosynthesis. So that's it for this video. Happy learning.